The following is a Hoop Ball presentation. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy NBA Today, a Hoop Ball presentation. We're also available on Dash Radio. Saw them sending out a little tweet about our show. Thank you to Dash for doing that. That's pretty sweet. Whatever it generates, we appreciate. Hopefully we can continue to provide good content for those of you listening through the Dash Nothing But Net platform. I am Dan Besbris, your gracious host here on this Monday episode, which, of course, you guys know the drill. Reverse chronological lightning round Monday. We'll take some time on this one, probably half the show at least, to go over everything that happened through the weekend. This is a tradition on Fantasy NBA Today. We go through all of the box scores over the weekend, talk about each team's most recent game, and that way we can kind of reset ourselves for the week to come. We're also going to be talking to Tom Lewis of Indie Cornrows on Twitter. He'll be giving us a little bit of a deep dive today. That's right, we're going to sneak a deep dive in on this Monday on the Indiana Pacers, a team that's been driving me up the wall, bat bleep insane, trying to figure out who exactly is going to see the minutes, the touches, and get the fantasy goods on a night-to-night basis. It's been super annoying. Tom will, again, try to, I guess the expression I'm going to use on today's show is talk me off a ledge. We'll see if he can pull it off. It's a heavy lifting on that one. Thank you to everybody that got in on the DFS contest on Friday. Beat the Expert promo. We were like 5 people short of filling up the room, which to me is awesome because I know the DFS places, they tend to be crowded on Fridays, but we're less crowded on Friday. Podcasts are less listened to on Fridays. A lot of you that listen to our Friday show do so over the weekend and then into Monday morning. Hoop Ball as a whole, I mean, just like basketball Twitter in general is less active on a Friday. And so the fact that we were we were like just a hair away from packing the house on, to me, what's a less impactful day was also sweet. We're going to have another one of those contests this week. I don't know if it's Wednesday or Friday yet, but obviously stay tuned. And when we have the link and all the information on the contest, we will get all of that stuff to you. I do have one more promo I want to do during the middle of the show, and obviously we'll take some time with that, but I do want to take a moment here at the beginning of the podcast to once again mention how grateful we are for our new partnership with Hawaiian Isles Kona Coffee Company. That's right, we talked about them a bunch on our Friday show. They are the title sponsor of all of our podcasts here at Hoop Ball as of Friday. It's amazing. I can't believe it happened. I'm so thrilled to be working with such a cool company, one that has sort of shares values with us here at Hoop Ball, a company that's in a similar boat where we're established but looking to sort of make inroads in new marketplaces. And so it's really cool. Go to HawaiianIsles.com if you want to check them out. It's a great time to do it because it's holiday season. Hanukkah has begun. Happy Hanukkah to our listeners of the Jewish faith. Christmas is later this month, just 3 weeks away, and a day, fine, if you want to get technical about it. Just 22 days away. They have great gifts available over there. You can give the gift of aloha. I'm going to steal that right from their website, throw it out there on the podcast. Again, that's HawaiianIsles.com is the website, and they're up in our Twitter business all the time, too. So if you want to find out more about them on Twitter, you can check them out there as well. The handle there is HI Kona Coffee. That's the Twitter handle. I wanted to make sure I got that right. At HI Kona Coffee. One more promo coming in the middle of the show. For now, let's start the reverse chronological lightning round. Well, you know the drill. You should. I mean, I guess there are a couple of you that could be listening for the first time, so hello to those of you listening for the first time. We'll start on Sunday. We'll work our way back through the weekend. We'll make sure we hit every single team's most recent basketball game. Sunday, Lakers had a day game here in Los Angeles. Second Sunday in a row, they lost the last one to the Orlando Magic. They beat the Dickens out of the Phoenix Suns in this one, who lost Devin Booker in the second quarter due to a hamstring injury. We don't know exactly the severity of it, but hammies, they tend to be annoying, and they tend to linger. And I know that the first reaction was like, well, it doesn't seem that bad, so maybe he'll be out there soon. I would be surprised if he didn't miss at least a couple of games. And maybe he will surprise me. That's a possibility. I've been wrong before, but just going on years of watching guys deal with hamstring stuff, there just aren't basketball players that bounce back from that. And they don't want to go quickly because if you play through a hamstring thing, you end up hurting something else. You put way too much of a burden on other parts of your body. And Devin Booker, who, by the way, is rapidly becoming injury prone, he can't really stay healthy, is out again, and Phoenix is in jeopardy of running out some really atrocious lineups. Josh Jackson is going to play a lot with both Booker and Warren on the shelf. Maybe TJ Warren's back for their next basketball game. They certainly could use him. He's dealing with an ankle thing, which seems like his recovery could be quicker and less prone to setback. Josh Jackson also will kill you in turnovers and percentages. You do not want to use him in a 9-cat situation. You could, however, use him in a points league situation. The guys you're looking at on this team right now are the other dudes. DeAndre Ayton obviously is going to have some big games, provided he stays out of foul trouble and the thing doesn't turn into an insane blowout like this one does. Mikal Bridges, who came back from the dead to have 11-4 with 2 steals, 2 threes on 4 out of 8 shooting. He's still such a low usage rate guy that I'm not, racing to the wire to pick him back up, especially if Warren comes back in the next game or two. It could end up being a really short stint. And then Richaun Holmes deserves a mention from us as well for putting up 3 steals and 4 blocks in yesterday's game. Yes, he got some extra time because Ayton was in foul trouble in the first half, and yes, he got some extra time because Ayton was out for the final 6 minutes due to blowout stuff, so 23 minutes is obviously way higher than what Richaun is used to. This is like an extra 50% for him over his 16 or 17. But when he gets those extra couple of minutes, he can blow the roof off of a fantasy game, especially against other teams' garbage units. I mean, he can just go nuts. The 1 rebound was sort of weird. I'll give you that. But he's been amazing lately, and this is a guy that we've been clamoring to get more minutes all the time. Since his Philadelphia days, he's inside the top 100 now over the last 2 weeks. The 70% shooting is probably not sustainable. The 3 combined defensive steals stats are not sustainable either, so he's not going to sit inside the top 100. But he's right on the cusp of standard league value, and if you want to roll with him here, expecting Phoenix to get blown out every single night for the foreseeable future, it might not be the worst idea in the world. He might see some extra blowout minutes, and you might get to roll within. Ilya Kobo is the other name that needs to be mentioned. We were looking at almost the whole Suns team. 3 points, 4 assists in 30 minutes. He was bad. He had 3 turnovers. He shot 1 for 9. You had to know that there were going to be ups and downs, and he had to deal with the defensive Lonzo Ball, who gets destroyed in the media for being bad offensively, and they're right. He's not very good on the offensive end of the ball, but he is an outstanding defender at the point guard position. He's just swallowing people up right now and is not getting nearly enough credit for it. So I'll admit I don't have the exact statistics of when Ball was guarding other teams' point guards, but if you look at the last few games for the Lakers, Darren Collison shot 3 for 12 in that game, the win over Indiana. Dennis Smith Jr. shot 5 out of 14 in the Lakers' win over the Mavericks. I don't know if he guarded Luka Doncic at any point during that game, but he went 2 for 13 in that contest. And then, of course, yesterday, Okobo 1 for 9. Lonzo's doing work out there, man. He's turning the ball over a lot because he's trying to get more involved on the offensive end, and I actually like that. Get aggressive, take it to the hole, learn how to score around bigger guys by trying to do it. See what their tendencies are. He seems like a smart enough basketball player where if he's going to try something, he's going to learn something from it. From a fantasy standpoint, he's been a really rough guy to try to own this year, but from a reality standpoint, he's been quite helpful. And yet, we don't have time to talk about this on today's podcast, and we did anyway. On the Lakers side, obviously you had some blowout stuff, so nobody logged a ton of minutes. Lonzo and LeBron actually managed at the 30-minute mark in this game. KCP and Josh Hart were the 2 guys I was watching to see if either of them could kind of separate in that battle for shooting guard minutes, and the answer was no. New Orleans and Charlotte. Charlotte is getting banged up these days. New Orleans, you've got Tim Frazier as a streaming assist specialist right now, at least while Etuan Moore and Elfrid Payton are out. I think he'll continue to be useful even with Moore back, But obviously when Peyton returns, then Frazier disappears. And right now you're using him only if you need a guy to give you 7 assists or more on a nightly basis for a team that likes to run. So he's just going to fall into assists because he's going to start the offense and he's going to pass it to somebody who takes a shot, and they're going to do it a lot of times over the course of a game. The Charlotte side is the more interesting one. Old man Marvin was just starting to rev the engines a little bit over there. I was crowing about him on Twitter because I couldn't believe it, frankly, that he was actually looking pretty good. In fact, if you look at his last couple of weeks, it's the 30-minute thing, man. It's the 30-minute rule with Marvin. He had 31 minutes in Oklahoma City, had 10 and 6 with a steal and a couple of three-pointers. He had 36 minutes in Atlanta. He had 20 and 13 with 4 3 balls in that. It's just crazy that he has this. It's not even, I would call it an artificial cutoff, but it's just if he plays 30 minutes, I think we said it was like 28 and a half when we broke it all down for like the last 2 years on a previous podcast. If he hits the 28 and a half minute mark, it's going to be a good fantasy line. It's a 1-to-1 thing for him right now. He played 37 minutes against Milwaukee. He had 16 and 8 with 2 defensive stats and 4 3-pointers. He played 21 minutes against Atlanta, and he had 0 points and 6 rebounds. 32 minutes against Utah. He had 15 and 11 with a steal and 3 threes, and then he hurt his shoulder in yesterday's game, and that's a pisser, and he's probably going to get dropped, and rightfully so, because shoulder stuff does tend to take a little bit of time to heal. I think you're going to see him miss a week or two with a shoulder sprain. And Miles Bridges stepped up, played 29 minutes in yesterday's game. He was a guy that was already sort of flirting with standard league value, and he will have it, I would presume, for as long as Marvin Williams is out, because you give Miles Bridges 25 minutes or more, he's likely to get you blocks and threes and rebounds and be kind of like a Marvin Williams with athleticism kind of guy who's still learning the ropes and isn't as good of a foul shooter and isn't as good of an outside shooter, but can also get to the rim and dunk a little bit, and that floats the field goal percent. So he had 16 and 8 with an assist and 2 blocks. I think he's worth streaming for as long as there's this open window here. And Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is the other guy to keep an eye on, but he only played 20 minutes in yesterday's game, and that, to me, was a little bit of an indictment. I don't think they want to use him for a ton. I think they want him out there running just hard, going full bore, playing hard defense for about 20 minutes a game, and that's probably their goal. Utah-Miami, another one worth exploring. Not as much on the Utah side. We're seeing more minutes, by the way, lately for Jay Crowder, who is still sort of hovering around the periphery. He's number 113. No, excuse me, I have that number wrong. Let me recalibrate. I'm looking at the wrong guy here. Jay Crowder is not number 113 in 9-cat. He's actually number 124, slightly behind that, despite under 1 turnover, because for whatever reason, his defensive stats that he used to get in Boston are gone, and he's shooting the ball terribly. He's a 40%er on pretty high volume these days, so you're looking at a guy who's probably more valuable in a punt field goal situation or maybe even a point situation, but I am keeping an eye on because the minutes are up. Favors minutes are down as Utah tries to modernize their offense a little bit, and so he's a guy to keep an eye on, but he's a guy that's overrated because he's been scoring and hitting threes where the other stuff is severely lacking. The Miami side, okay, let's dig into this one a little bit. I think, we have to limit this podcast in time, but this is a club that requires a few minutes. Number 1, Hassan Whiteside. Every time you guys, I say you guys, I'm not talking about you guys, the listeners. I'm just talking about the fantasy landscape. Every time he has 1 or 2 bad games, it's up. Whiteside is done. Bam Adebayo is taking over for him. It's just going to happen. It's not going to happen, guys. There are going to be these stretches where Spoelstra doesn't like what Whiteside is doing on the floor, or maybe he's dealing with a little bit of knee soreness or some other thing that's limiting him, and then you're going to get 2 or 3 games from Adebayo where he looks really good. The issue here is not that Adebayo is not a good basketball player. He looks like he's going to have a decent future ahead of him as a rebounding, defensive, dunking big man type. The issue is that he's superfluous. You can't play Adebayo at the 4, and Hassan Whiteside is still a better rim protector, at least right now, than Bam. It's just the way it is. Yes, maybe it'll switch at some point. I don't think it's going to be in the next couple of weeks. So Whiteside's going to start, and he played well. He had a 20-20 game with a steal and 3 blocks. He's totally stopped hitting free throws this year, which is just awful, and he's killing you. He's now shooting 48% at the line. He's become a punt guy who was at 70% last year. So, I mean, I hope that number sort of levels off a little bit. In fact, the numbers, it's gotten so bad for Whiteside. He's on a stretch now where he hasn't made more than 50% of his free throws since November 14th. Since then, 2 for 4, 3 for 6, 2 for 7, 0 for 2, 1 for 7, 0 for 2, 1 for 6. You heard that right. He's 2 of his last 15 at the free throw line. And he's not a good foul shooter in his career, but he was 65, 63, 70 the last 3 years, and now he's at 48. So hopefully that levels off. And then you're talking about a top 50, top 40 guy. The only thing that's sinking him right now is free throws. Second thing on the Miami docket is that Wayne Ellington looks like he's locked into minutes for as long as these guys are out. Tyler Johnson, Goran Dragic, Dion Waiters. We don't know when they're coming back. So you're rolling with Ellington right now. And I know the field goal percent is not good, but he takes all of his shots from three-point land. And the fact is he's going to be hitting 2 to 5 of them on a nightly basis with some steals and almost no turnovers. That's worth using. He's inside the standard league cut line as long as the Heat have these guys missing. He's top 100 on the year, and he's been better than that over the last couple of weeks. Whiteside inside the top 70 over the last couple of weeks. While, by the way, shooting 33%, because when you take 9 shots and you make 3 of them, and they're all three-pointers, it doesn't kill you. Like, there are guys out there that shoot 42% on 15 or 16 shots and make the same number of threes, and that's actually worse. Because at least with Ellington, you're getting all of his buckets from downtown, and hopefully that number will come up a tiny bit. So he's worth using right now. Justice Winslow, no. I don't care that he played more minutes in yesterday's game. James Johnson, no. He's just not James Johnson anymore. He's got old. It happened. Josh Richardson is a yes. Rodney McGruder is a no, and he also hurt himself yesterday. He sprained his right ankle, but he was playing poorly for a couple of weeks anyway. The last 2 names, and I cleverly left them off the list, are Dwayne Wade and Kelly Olynyk. Goran Dragic, Tyler Johnson, still, they're out for further notice, so we'll deal with them when they come back. Dwayne Wade, I think there is this farewell tour kind of thing, and at the moment, he's the team's best point guard. At the moment. He's not a great point guard. Neither is Goran Dragic, and neither is Tyler Johnson, and neither is James Johnson. All the guys that are supposed to be point guards on this team or handle some of that responsibility are really not that good at seeing passing lanes. Wade had 8 assists in yesterday's game. He played 30 minutes. 15 and 8 was the line. He made none of his 15 shots, but he did make his free throw, so I guess there was that. There is a weird farewell tour thing that could be developing with Wade where he's going to be playing minutes. Can you use him in 9 category formats? I don't think so. He even with some of these strong games lately, he's still outside the top 109 cat, and it's not because of turnovers either. It's because of percentages. He's not a good foul shooter this late in his career. He never was that great. And he's been terrible from the field. He's shooting 39% over that stretch. And he used to be this rare guard that could get steals and blocks, and in his old age, those aren't really coming either. The questions we have to ask ourselves with Wade are, do any of these things revert towards the mean? Is there any mean reversion here? Or is this just sort of what an old guy can do? Like, look at last season with Miami. He played 22 minutes. He had 12 points. He had a steal and 0.7 blocks last year. He had 1.4 and 0.7 the previous year. So is it that level of precipitous drop-off? From a field goal percentage standpoint, I think this is what you're going to get. He's not the 48 to 50%er he was during his prime. He's more the 43 to 46%er he is here during his later years. He's also taking more three-pointers, so that's going to sag that number even further. 68% free throw shooting, I think that'll come back a little bit. I don't care how old you get, you're going to basically be who you are, and he's mostly been a mid-70s% foul shooter throughout his career. So that'll probably come up a little bit. The minutes are at 26 right now, which would be much higher than last season, And is that entirely because guys are out for the Heat, or would they play him this many minutes anyway? I don't really know. So, there is actually room for improvement for a man who's going to be like 55 years old. That's not true. He's older than me, which is all you need to say about him in the NBA right now. His steals could actually come up a little bit, and they should, provided there hasn't been some crazy drop-off year over year. And his free throw percent should come up. So while he's hovering just outside of 9-category roster point, he could actually get there. But it's always going to be a late-round guy. It's never going to be any higher than that. And he's going to have more value in points formats where the free throw and field goal percent don't impact you quite as hard. Last guy in the Miami list is Kelly Olynyk. He's been a hoop ball guy for a very long time. We know that when he sees playing time, he turns it into value quickly. He's number 108 over the last 2 weeks in 9-category format, and he's number 65 over the last week where he's actually played more. Here's the reason for optimism, and then we'll have the reason for pessimism on Olynyk. The reason for optimism is he still played 29 minutes yesterday, despite the fact that Hassan Whiteside was playing well. The previous 2 games, he was in there with Adebayo, and you thought, all right, well, there's no Whiteside. They're just trying some stuff. This one, and arguably his best game of that stretch, came alongside Whiteside. They were on the floor together for stretches. Yes, Utah is a bigger team. When Favors is on the floor, you can get away with sort of playing 2 centers, but they ran Olynyk out there for 30 minutes. That was 13 minutes more than Favors played in yesterday's game. So Olynyk and Whiteside, they combined for about 63 minutes. Favors and Gobert combined for about 55. So there was at least 8 minutes where Olynyk was out there and with Whiteside and Favors wasn't. I don't know exactly how that whole thing shook out, but at least that. Possibly more, depending on, how the rotations took place, what time during the game they happened. Kelly had 16 and 8 with a steal, a block, and 3 3-pointers. He can do those cash counting stuff with decent percentages, and so he can move up the standings fast. He has the fantasy stat set to leap, especially in a 9-cat format where his turnovers are usually going to be relatively low because his minutes are not going to be all that high. Steals, blocks, threes on decent percentages, yeah. That's a useful thing. His per 36s, he's never going to get to that point, but his per 36s would make him like a 3 3-pointer, 1.2 steal, 1 block guy. So he's never going to get to that level, but you could expect if he's going to get it to 25, let's say 25 minutes when he's playing well, he can maybe climb a little bit higher. Then you're looking at a guy that can hit 2 3-pointers a game and get you a steal and, 0.6, 0.7 blocks a game and get you 6 rebounds because he's just a big man standing on the floor. And that's a top 75 fantasy line. So I'm taking a shot on Kelly Olynyk. The reason for pessimism is just because he's Kelly Olynyk and it's the Heat and he could disappear at a moment's notice. But right now, the guys that could take his minutes are all on the floor already. It's James Johnson as Justice Winslow, basically, and he's been outplaying them at the power forward spot. So there you go. All right, let's pick up velocity a little bit here because I wanted to spend some more time on the teams that deserved it. Memphis, not a whole lot to go over with this team. They just got beat up by Joel Embiid, basically. Jaren Jackson Jr. looks good. JaMychal Green actually logging some decent minutes off the bench right now. Not quite a 9-category guy, although that line will have you tantalized a little bit. But let's not go crazy. He's still JaMychal Green. He's still second in that pecking order. And you need a particular team build for his stuff to be worthwhile, especially while, for whatever reason, he turns the ball over too often for a backup big man. Philadelphia, there was no Wilson Chandler in this game, so Mike Muscala got extra run. If that ever were to be a more permanent thing, then he'd be worth owning, but it's not, so he's not. Onward and upward. Portland, San Antonio, Mo Harkless got 34 minutes with Evan Turner on the shelf. He would be a must-own, must-start guy if Evan Turner ever missed significant time. Turner dealing with an Achilles thing, so who knows? If we get report that he's going to miss more than a couple of games, then you make a move on Harkless. Otherwise, I don't think that you do it here. We know that Turner is ahead of him in the general playing time bucket. And that's unfortunate because Harkless is a much more fantasy-friendly game, but we're keeping an eye on him at the very least. With San Antonio, with Pau Gasol out long-term, and did anything change really? Well, no, not so much. Derek White's been getting more minutes the last couple of games. He had 10, 5, and 6, so he's now on the watch list once again after he had sort of come and gone, and is he now kind of on the way in again? He's had 2 good games in a row. And when I say good, I mean he's played 30 minutes in 2 games in a row. He's averaging 10.5 points, 7.5 assists, 5 rebounds. Does not have a defensive stat in those 2 games. And I'm not sure that he's really ever going to be a big defensive stats guy, which is going to really limit what he can do for your fantasy team. But he's on the watch list, so we'll keep one eye on him. And Spurs got a much-needed win. Clippers and Mavericks. Clippers were a team we were keeping one eye on. Patrick Beverley got ejected, so you figured there'd be more opportunity here for the guards, and it was mostly Lou Williams that took it. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, after a couple of really interesting games that saw him post assists and hit 3-pointers, and I started to say, well, maybe he's going to fix his fantasy game. He came back with a serious dud. Luckily, the good over the last week has outweighed the bad because over those few games, he had a lot of defensive stats, and he did hit some 3-pointers, and he had assists. I'm still not certain which of these guys is going to be the one moving forward. He's been a top 60 guy over the last week because those 2 good games were very, very good. You know, he had 3 steals and 3 blocks. He averaged 5 assists and 6 rebounds in those games. That's probably on the high side, average 1.5 steals and blocks, but he does do both. He's a guard that's going to block some shots. So, you're looking at a guy who is going to be around 1 steal and 1 block, and then it's going to come down to whether or not he can hit shots from the field, make a 3-pointer, and or have some assists. He's got to get that assist number up near 4.5 or 5, and that's going to be the big-time difference maker for him, and it's what's going to propel him to that higher ranking, because he's not going to shoot 52% forever, and he's probably not going to average 1.5 steals and 1.5 blocks. So certainly some reasons for optimism on that front. Absolutely. No question about it. The things that he was not doing when he first got the starting gig, meaning assists, they showed up for 2 games. Then they went away for 1, but we're going to keep an eye on him because that'll be how we gauge his value for the rest of the year. If he's someone you should try to trade for, or if he's someone you should try to sell high on. I am not sold either direction on this one yet. We're keeping an eye on it. Turning the clock back to Saturday, we got Milwaukee, New York in a slugfest here, overtime action. Not chasing on the New York side. Guys, don't chase. You know what happens. The guys that show up one night disappear the next night. You can keep a watch on Emmanuel Mudiay because Trey Burke hurt himself, and he's sort of the only point guard left. Frank Ntilikina got a DNP in this game. So keep an eye on Mudiay, but Damian Dotson's not going to shoot 7 for 9. And Kevin Knox is not going to score 26 points every game. He got hot. It's just going to come and go. Noah Vonleh is worth using. Tim Hardaway Jr., he can't shoot 29% forever. And we talked about Mitchell Robinson way too much on this one to really worry about it too much. Did look like, by the way, Chris Middleton on the other side got benched. I'm sure he'll be fine in the next basketball game. Warriors and Pistons. Steph Curry made his return, and he was rusty. He did end up with 27 points, sort of got warm in the second half, but 7 turnovers. He'll be fine. All he does here is knock out Quinn Cook. We also heard Damian Jones tore a pectoral muscle, and everybody's like, well, how quickly should I add Jordan Bell? I mean, you could stream him for a week. I know we got word that Draymond Green is going to miss 1 more week of action at least, but we've already seen it that, like, the Jordan Bell thing, he's just not out there for very long. I mean, I don't even know that getting 20 minutes would be enough for him lately. You can try it, man. You can give it a whirl. I'm not that interested in it. Maybe you get a few games out of it. That's fine, but I'm looking for somebody that's going to help after a week from now as well. On the Pistons side, I've been keeping one eye on Stanley Johnson. He had a really nice game, but he only played 22 minutes, which is a little bit of a letdown. We'll keep watching him for the opportunity. I mean, he has a game that could be fantasy-friendly, but he's got to be out there I'm not going to trust a guy that rarely has a high usage rate. He did in this ballgame, but I'm not going to trust a guy that rarely has that kind of usage if he's only playing 22 and a half minutes. Washington tried a new starting lineup. Thomas Satoransky was inserted and got swallowed up by the guys around him. He had a usage rate of 10.5. Kelly Oubre moved back to the bench. His usage rate went up to 15, but he was still terrible. I'm dropping Oubre. I know that he has this clear path to minutes if anybody gets traded, but I can't sit on a guy who's going to play 21 minutes while we wait. When he was starting, there was an opportunity for him to get to 30. As a reserve, it's probably not going to be that easy to get there. You're obviously using Markieff Morris until further notice. He's rolling off the bench. He's a perfect fit for their bench unit, and so that's cool. On the Brooklyn side, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson now starting and putting up slightly better numbers. He's still sitting outside standard league cut lines, but with 11 and 8, a three-pointer, a steal, most days you figure he'll make closer to 47% of his shots instead of 30. He made all of his free throws. There is room for him to be useful as a starter and playing 28 minutes. He seems more comfortable in the starting unit. So I'm sitting on him. I'm going to add him and put him on my bench, and we're going to see if he can actually get this thing squared away moving forward. And that's basically all I care about on that Brooklyn side. Chicago, Houston, really not a ton of information in Lauri Markkanen's return. He played 25 minutes. Justin Holiday did drop by about 10 of those 25 minutes, came from his bucket because Jabari Parker slid down and he was a bad small forward, not surprisingly. But I'm not panicking on a Holiday because his fantasy game is crazy friendly. He had too many turnovers and he didn't shoot the ball well, but he still had a 3. He had 4 steals and a block. And, maybe he just goes harder in the minutes he's out there right now. So I'm not panicking at all. Jabari Parker is a sell guy, as Chris Dunn and Bobby Portis are also kind of breathing down the necks here of the point guard situation and also the big man situation. So keep an eye on that. And we'll assess when the Bulls get fully healthy. Houston is not an interesting fantasy team right now. We have an idea of what's going on there, and we can just sort of roll with it. Boston, Minnesota, as we continue our tour of the Saturday games. Taj Gibson, 23 minutes. Dario Saric, 20. Taj missed all 4 of his free throws, or it would have been, an 11 and 8 game for him, which would have been pretty standard, and he's a guy I'm using again, and Dario's a guy that I am not. Simple as that. Boston side, thinning the herd. Jaylen Brown being out has made these other guys just more comfortable because they're getting more minutes and a few more touches. And so Boston all of a sudden is playing better. As I've said before, it's not because Brown was hurting them. Sometimes you just can't play like 11 guys every game and try to get them all 20 minutes. Marcus Smart is worth streaming until Brown comes back. The rest of these guys were basically all owned in enough places anyway. They're just going to be a little bit better. They go from being too many mouths to feed to maybe just a hair too many mouths to feed. But otherwise, Gordon Hayward waking up. Monster game for Gordon. I doubt he follows that up with a similarly large game, but you never know. Toronto, not really interested. We know exactly what's going on out there. Jonas Valanciunas, don't panic. He goes through these ups and downs, and that'll happen when you're only getting 18 to 20 minutes a game. Cleveland side, it's still basically just Tristan Thompson. That's it. Chetty Osman playing big minutes. Rodney Hood played big minutes in this game. Colin Sexton doesn't look like he's going to do enough stuff. That just the fantasy, the well-roundedness of the fantasy games on this team is non-existent. So it's Tristan Thompson or bust. Indiana blew one late in Sacramento. Darren Collison had a double-double with 6 steals, though, and he's chugging along now with Victor Oladipo out. Otherwise, it's same old story for this team, and we'll talk more about the Pacers with Tom Lewis momentarily. Sacramento, Bogdan finally added a couple of steals to his otherwise nice lines recently. Iman Shumpert only had 8 points, but bounced back the ways you wanted him to with 2 threes, 2 steals, low turnovers, decent percentage from the field, not killing you there. You'd like to see a tiny bit more, maybe like one more 3-ball or 1 more assist or 2 more rebounds. But this is what's kept him right on the edge of standard league ownership, and I'm using him in some spots, I'll admit. And finally, a quick look at Friday, just to make sure there are no teams that we avoided. There have to be, because I think there are only 13 total games over the weekend. Am I remembering this properly? Oklahoma City is one. Nerlens Noel had a big game in a blowout. You can stream him if you want, but again, he's got a little bit of the Rashawn Holmes situation, but he's playing even fewer minutes than Rashawn lately. Almost the same exact fantasy game, though. They're like perfect parallels to one another, except that Rashawn is going to get usually 16 to 18 minutes, and Noel is getting more like 12 or 13. Really difficult to use a guy that needs a blowout to even come close to standard league value. But he, again, depending on your team build, maybe there's a spot where that makes sense. Atlanta, that was a team we didn't talk about over the weekend. We're seeing some better stuff out of Taurean Prince lately. Am I throwing him back into my lineups? I'm thinking about it. And then Jeremy Lin, by the way, is probable for tonight, so that should help a little bit stabilize the offense, especially with that second unit. I like Jeremy Lin. I don't know if he's going to have any minutes restriction. He's been playing well. I told you he's a guy that I'm using. He's been a standard league guy lately. And Orlando. I think that might be the last team that we haven't talked about. Everybody's losing their minds with Jonathan Isaac, and I don't blame you. He's been a tough guy to own so far this year. It's been up and down. He had a steal and a block in this game, but only 2 points and a really crazy low usage rate against a Phoenix team that they should have just been running and gunning and having a ball. And it hasn't happened yet. It's true. But his minutes are trending up, and so there's no way I'm panicking on him right now. Not while the minutes are on the rise. That's the sign you were looking for, and it's right there before you. I'm sure there's someone I'm missing because I'm at an odd number right now. Oh, Denver. The Nuggets. Thoroughly uninteresting fantasy team. Good. I'm glad that would have been the one that we forgot about. Okay. That's your reverse chronological lightning round. Let's dig a little deeper on the Indiana Pacers with a nice little lead-in. All right, this is a team that, I'll admit, has left me at times a tad frustrated because, as we are at our core, a fantasy sports website, there has been a switch from very fast pace to not as fast pace, and a switch from using like 6 guys to using 8 or 9 guys. And luckily now, someone was kind enough to try to come on here and talk me off the ledge, and good luck to him. This is Tom Lewis. He's with Indy Cornrows. IndyCornrows.com is the website. At Indy Cornrows, if you want to give him a follow on Twitter. Good morning, Tom.
Hey, Dan. Thanks for having me on. I'll try and help you out.
Yeah, please. I'm sort of shaking in my seat over here. I'm getting a little antsy because last year the Pacers were incredibly predictable from a player performance perspective on a night-to-night basis. There were sort of generally the same 5 guys doing stuff every single night, and you just had it in stone. And this year, that hasn't been the case. Is it just the addition of more depth? Is it that some guys are not performing up to snuff? Why are we seeing so many guys playing significant minutes for this team?
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit all of the above, as usually is the case. But for starters, for the guys who were here last year, you've seen a drop-off from Darren Collison. I mean, his shooting percentages last year were unbelievable. He led the league in three-point field goal percentage, really had one of his best years shooting the ball. And this year, those numbers have dropped significantly. And he's just even having trouble getting three-point shots at this point. And then Thad Young also has not shot the three well at all and has dropped his attempts quite a bit. And his minutes have been a little different this year. He's been playing a little bit more with the reserve unit, but that gets him out of the starting unit a little quicker. So you add that to the fact that they did bring in Tyreke Evans and have been trying to incorporate him more, and it has been a rough go most of the time. And then also Doug McDermott, off to a very slow start, picked it up recently. So a lot of new faces trying to figure out what to do. And I think Nate McMillan is trying to figure out what guys work well together, and so he's been trying everything. You can tell.
Yeah. Well, we're basically at the quarter mark. I guess the follow-up there is, how long do you think it's going to take before things settle in a little bit, and how much does the Victor Oladipo injury either help or hurt that?
Yeah, I mean, maybe in the long run it helps. He has essentially missed the last 8 games. The first game He was hurt about 4 minutes in and had no impact on that game, so we kind of count that. And last year he didn't play in 7 games. They were 0-7. This year they're 4-4 and really just dumped their last game against Sacramento in frustrating fashion. So they've played a little bit better, and you can see where that depth is available. But really, at best, maybe they're a 500 team without him. And I think it's helped get Doug McDermott going maybe a little bit more, and you've seen some guys step up in different roles. Bojan Bogdanovic has really filled the gap and played well, but until they get Victor back, it's really hard to tell what this team can do consistently, night to night, because he's such a big presence in that lineup.
Okay, so let's get into the individual players to this point. You mentioned Darren Collison already, who's kind of been off to a certain degree this season. He's looked a little more comfortable with Oladipo out these last couple of games, and it's been weird. Like it almost seemed like it took him a week even without Victor to say, okay, I think I can still go try and do some stuff. The shooting percentage, as you said, is way down. It's well below even his career mark. He's at 42% this year. He's a career 47% shooter. So you got to figure that type of number comes back. He's shooting only 71% at the free throw line, and he's a career 85%er there. That sounds to me more like a mental thing than anything else, but I have to believe it evens out a little bit. Is he a guy you think that ends up doing more as the season progresses, or does he continue to lose time to Corey Joseph, who's played really well with that second unit?
Corey has really earned big minutes the way he's played. But back to Collison, I do think his numbers will level out, rise a little bit in the long run. Definitely can feel maybe a little middle, maybe a little pressing. I feel the same thing kind of with Thad. I mean, they had such good seasons last year, and that was a big reason for the overall success of the team. And backing that up again has put a little pressure on them, I think. And hopefully, at the free throw line in particular, Darren is not the only one who's fallen off. The team is, I think, at one point they were last in free throw shooting. I think maybe they're second to last now. It's like a virus has gone through that squad, and there have been a few games where they missed, double-digit free throws, and you just wonder what is going on, because a lot of those guys are good free throw shooters. So you got to figure in the long haul, Collison's numbers are going to level out and rise. So he's not, appearing to be injured at all, and he's definitely given effort. I know, he's at 31 now, so maybe Father Time is rearing his head a little bit, but I kind of doubt with him. I mean, he's still got the quicks. His game should still be intact. The only thing that's really been bugging me of late, just, you see it in the game, it just seems like he's either not ready to shoot or just slow to get his open looks off, and just ends up pump faking, driving, and kicking a lot more than he did last year.
Yeah, it actually, you said it, man. Tyreke Evans, next one on the list of guys to talk about, just feels like it hasn't been a great fit so far. Am I misreading that?
No, it definitely has felt that way. And, he was basically brought in to be a step ahead of Lance Stevenson as far as the role he could play, and actually being able to play next to Oladipo at times in crunch time to give the team a legitimate second scoring option on the wing. And he just has really struggled. There's been a few games where he's played well. It's interesting. I was looking at the numbers. When he scores 13 or more points, which has happened 7 times, they're 7-0. And the other night against Sacramento, he had 12. So I don't know what the magic threshold is there. But regardless, when he does have it going, you can see the impact he can have on the team. But he just seems like he can't quite fit in with what they're doing. I mean, the Pacers rely a lot on ball movement, and the ball is a little sticky with him, but he can make plays. And it just seems like there's nights where he's either not assertive or not quite sure what the other guy's going to do. And, he has some mind-numbing turnovers where, he's dribbled it off his foot 3 or 4 times lately. And it's like, that's got to be a little bit of concentration. So I'm sure he's frustrated a little bit, but he's been a good guy in the locker room. Good, you see him on the bench, and he's up with everybody cheering. He's not, a lot of people among the fan base think he's bringing the team down just because he's not an emotive guy. He rarely smiles, good, bad, and different. Compared to Lance, it's a complete 180. But he's not producing any less than Lance, and I think in the long run could still be good. But if they don't figure something out, they might have to move that piece at some point in the season.
Moving along to the wings, you mentioned Doug McDermott getting off to a little bit of a slow start. Bojan Bogdanovic has been excellent. I don't know that there's a whole lot that needs to be said about Bogdanovic other than just that he's been good. So I'm going to just continue to shuffle right along into the big man spots and go straight to Thad, who you had mentioned maybe feeling a little bit of pressure. It seems like the minutes are down about 3 or 4 this season. Is that a byproduct of just having a much better Domantas Sabonis, or is it, days when Thad's not playing well, he's going to see a couple fewer minutes and they just last year sort of didn't have that luxury? Do you see him improving as the season goes on, or is this the Thad we should expect for this season?
Yeah, with that, I kind of feel like this may be what he is this year, offensively in particular. I think he has played great defensively and has played a lot of different roles. He's been really flexible, guarding different guys on different teams, up and down in the back or in the front court. But offensively, I can't imagine he's going to shoot 20% from 3 for the whole year, but I just don't see him hunting many threes that much, and teams are really starting to leave him alone right now. So as far as offensive numbers, I don't know if he's going to be a guy that picks it up. And, similar to Collison, he's on he's on the end of his contract here. He's an expiring contract. There's pressure there with wanting to do well, or is the team going to trade him? I mean, there's a lot of different dynamics going on with this group this year, and a lot of it depends on how they play from game to game, and I think those things are factors with that, and with Sabonis playing so well, McMillan's trying to carve out as many minutes as he can for him off the bench, while still getting Turner his minutes, and that's where Thad's getting the short end of the stick. Did we heap too much onto a guy like Miles Turner? Because after that breakout season, which I believe was his sophomore campaign, he averaged almost 15 points, 7 rebounds, over 2 blocks a game. Everybody started to anoint him as like the next great center. He took a big step back last year, and this year you could argue more or less in line with last season. I don't know. I get the feeling like maybe we all just expected too much of a guy who's just a really good shot blocker and can space the floor a little bit as a big man, although he, like Thad, not taking a ton of three-pointers this year. Rebounds a little bit, but that's not really his game. Is that what happened? I mean, did the narrative get created that Miles Turner was going to be a superstar and he's actually just a really good basketball player and we should be okay with that? Yeah, I mean, his early play was, he showed those flashes where, he could step out and he could hit the three and definitely defend the rim. He got LeBron at the rim and smothered him in the playoffs. And, those early plays are things people remember. And, as opposed to seeing all 82 games and everything that, maybe wasn't so great at that time. And then as he gets older and you're wondering, okay, where's the consistency with that? He's still developing it. And offensively, he hasn't added a lot to his game. Maybe that's frustrating. One thing I always wanted to add is a little jump hook, and he definitely has worked on that, and we're seeing it some this year finally. But defensively, he's been a good anchor around the rim and playing his role on that team. But offensively, he's going to have to generate a little more eventually, but by no means at his age of 22 do we want to give up on his game. And the other thing, obviously, is he's stuck in a constant comparison with Domas Sabonis, who's playing out of his mind and really looking to develop into a real star player for the Pacers.
So the last question is more about, or last topic, I guess I should say, because I may end up with a follow-up question, so I don't want to box myself in here, is about pace. And that's the thing that's jumped out to me the most, beyond all of the other stuff, because we've seen, Eric Spoelstra to go to Miami is a nice example of this, of when guys aren't playing that great on a night, he'll just yank them out of the lineup. And now that the Pacers have depth, that's something that Nate McMillan can do as well. But the thing that I think jumps out the most is that the Pacers just aren't playing that fast this year. And last season, they sort of made a name on getting out and running, forcing steals and getting easy buckets. And to their credit, by the way, to Indiana's credit, even without Oladipo, like you said, they're playing 500 without him. They're at 13-10 overall, so they're by no means in bad shape. And it's not like you need to totally fix a broken cart or anything. But they have slowed down, Tom. Why have the Pacers, I don't want to say abandoned, because maybe it's just by necessity, but why have they gone away from the type of easy buckets, the speed that got them out to quick starts, to catch teams off guard? Why hasn't that happened as much this season?
I think it's really just how the season has played out. McMillan talks a lot about wanting to push the pace and be faster, and it frustrates them when they're not. And really, their transition offense, as you mentioned last year, was great. It's still great when they can get out and transition, but it just isn't happening. And on the other end, their half-court offense efficiency is not good, and not as good as it was last year, and that has slowed them down because they're struggling to get good shots, and that half-court offense has been getting bogged down a lot, and that's where you're seeing the pace go down, and they're just not getting as many steals and turnovers right now to make up for it as they did last year. So I obviously. Again, I go back to Oladipo being out the last 8 games, and he alone juices up the pace a little bit. But even before he went out, things were still a little clunky as they're still trying to work through. I think finding what really works offensively overall for this team.
Do you see that rectifying itself as these guys continue to find their roles?
I would think so. I mean, that kind of worked out that way last year. I mean, with all the complaints we kind of have watching this team, it's been a little frustrating this year. They still are a game better than they were last year at this time. And, last year was such a surprise that they were good because no one knew Oladipo was going to come over and go crazy and all that. So, the expectations changed. But, they're still are in some respects a work in progress this year with some of those new faces and I think determine what they're going to do with all of them going forward. But I would think if they can get Oladipo back healthy, for the long stretch of the season, these things will work themselves out.
Very good. He is Tom Lewis. He is at Indy Cornrows on Twitter, at Indy Cornrows. You can go to indycornrows.com as well. Check out the sweet work over there. Tom, thank you so much for carving out some time for us and trying to talk me off a ledge here.
Anytime, Dan.
Thanks again, my man. The marvelous Tom Lewis, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks again to Tom for hopping on with us here and digging a little deeper on the Pacers. The feeling I got was basically the feeling I've been sitting on, which is Darren Collison is a hold. Thad Young is a probably not going to happen this year. Oladipo is a hopefully he gets healthy soon thing. Miles Turner is this is probably who he is, more of a top 60, 70 type when things are going well, as opposed to a top 25 type. Domantas Sabonis is real, although I don't know that he shoots almost 70% all season long. Bojan Bogdanovic, he's just better. And then you got Tyreke Evans, who may or may not be on the team in a couple of months, just not really fitting all that well. A look now at Monday evening. It is a 7-game Monday card. We try to wrap this thing up. Oklahoma City is in Detroit. OKC favored by 2.5. Warriors, 10.5-point road favorites against the Atlanta Hawks. I would have a very slight lean to the Atlanta side in that one, but that's a tough wager to make. Toronto by 6.5 over the Denver Nuggets. Washington, 2-point favorites on the road at Madison Square Garden. Brooklyn by 6 over the Cleveland Cavaliers. That's a big number to lay for a couple of bad teams. New Orleans by 2.5 at home over the Clippers, and Houston, a 1.5-point road favorite in Minnesota. From a gambling standpoint, we're kind of resetting ourselves as well. I admit, over the weekend, I didn't have time to watch the lines as much as I usually do, and get a feel for, what teams might be leaning a certain way. I would say Houston playing better again. Minnesota maybe showing signs of weakness post-trade. They were in a little bit of a honeymoon period with Rob Covington playing so well and things just all looking so gravy. But with Chris Paul healthy for the Rockets, they're just a better team. And with a line that short, sometimes you think about it. I'm not making any wagers today. I'm just kind of settling back in on this Monday, but these are just a few thoughts I'm having as I'm looking at the card. Cleveland's been especially bad on the road. I think that's why you're looking at this line, and Brooklyn is favored by as many as they are. Knicks have actually been decent at home, and the Wizards have been a dumpster fire. So, is the new lineup the reason Washington won a basketball game? Do they get up to play in New York? I think I'm dodging that one. Warriors, as they reincorporate Steph Curry, defensively, they're not the same team with Draymond Green out. They could very easily be tied in this game and then win by 11 over the final 3 minutes. So that's a tough one to make as well. But I would lean to the Atlanta side. And that's the betting stuff on today's card. Again, mostly just kind of settling back in today, not feeling too strong about any of these guys. From a fantasy standpoint, we're watching Stanley Johnson in that first one, see if he can get his minutes back up. Watching all of the creatures on the Atlanta Hawks. Jeremy Lin coming back today. What does that mean for his fantasy value? Can he pick up where he left off? Did Taurean Prince kind of keep it going here lately? He's been better. Denver, Toronto, really almost nothing to keep an eye on in that basketball game. Washington, Satoransky, does he stay in the starting unit? And if so, can he actually get any usage rate? Can Kelly Oubre make some noise off the bench? Who's going to be the guy to step up for New York? Is Moutier going to keep it going here with Trey Burke likely out for a game or two or more? Can Tim Hardaway Jr. stop shooting 29%? Noah Vonleh's been playing well. Cantor's been better. Can Mitchell Robinson stay on the floor for more than 10 minutes without fouling out? A lot of question marks in New York, but generally it's an avoid almost everybody spot because it's just a different one every night. The reason I bring it up in this one is because Moutier has a path right now to just getting starters minutes, and I know his stat set is not great, but if he can not kill you in percentages, then there could be some streaming value there. Cleveland, Brooklyn, we're always watching the Cavs to see if anybody can separate themselves, but they haven't been. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson is the guy to watch on the Brooklyn side. Shai is the guy to watch for the Clippers. Frazier is the guy to watch for the Pelicans. And then Houston, Minnesota, we're sort of still watching the Taj Saric square off, but also I think we pretty much know how that goes. Other thing I wanted to promo, the in-season premium membership is down to $20. It's $19.99 starting yesterday, with an additional $5 off for the first half of December. So it's $14.99 right now. $15 for December, January, February, March, and half of April. $15 for 4.5 months. And you can use one of the coupon codes we've given out on this podcast, a million of them over the last God knows how long on this show, to get it down to $12. Go to hoop-ball.com. Click on the Premium tab, select Go Premium, and In-Season Membership is the tab you want to get. Again, you can get it for as little as $12 if you use one of our $3 coupons from this podcast. Can't remember what they were? Tweet me. At Dan Besbris on Twitter, at Indy Cornrows. Thanks again to Tom Lewis, at Hoopball Fantasy, and at Hoopball Tweets. And hell, I'll tell you who's coming up on the podcast. We got Micah Patria to talk DFS, give us our next lesson because, damn it, I need it. The great Kyle McCune will be on with us later this week as well. We, of course, have our live show with Aaron Bruski, and I will try to squeeze in a mailbag episode. We haven't done one of those in a few weeks, and I know you guys have questions, so hopefully we can get those answered as well. Have a lovely Monday, everybody. Welcome back to the work week. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.